act as if your success is certain, right? Suspend your disbelief. Doubt, which is this whole thing about mindset, doubt is worse than fear. We've all heard the acronym for that would be, false emotions appearing real, right? You can walk through that. But doubt is a different animal. Doubt is with that little boogeyman, not fear. It's the little boogeyman that lives in your head, that right before you call the girl to go on a date, or right before you go walk into the boardroom for the biggest presentation of your life, you start telling yourself things that are just not true.
Welcome to another installment of the Perspective Podcast. My name is Devon. I'm missing my co-host Mitch Harley, but today we have two special guests on to make up for it. We have Moza Bella, who is a speaker, mentor, author, peace ambassador, focuses on female entrepreneurial, the female entrepreneurial spirited people. And we have Scott Miller, who is a business coach, and the two of them have come together as a dynamic duo in the world of sales and sales coaching and helping businesses kind of tip over the scales in terms of growing themselves and getting their desired results. When I was talking to you guys off camera or off recording here, as you were talking, you reminded me of a book that I read recently called Rocket Fuel. And in this book, I don't want to give away the whole thing because it is a really good read. You should go check it out. But there are basically two different categories of people that are in the entrepreneurial world. On one hand, you have the visionary, somebody who has their head in the clouds, is constantly coming up with ideas, is very, very creative, very emotionally driven, but is still missing some of the elements they need to really blast things off into the stratosphere, where on the other hand, you have the integrators, the people that take those big ideas and bring them to life. And it sounds to me like the two of you have really found a way to cooperate and collaborate in that way, where one of you brings the sugar and spice and the other actually turns that into the cake. I'd love to get a quick backstory from each of you. Moza, if you wouldn't mind kind of taking the wheel from here, now that we have a good understanding of who you are and all that kind of thing, I'd love to kind of learn more about how you came to be. What is your coming of age story that brought you into this world?
So hi, Devon. Thank you for having us today. And it's funny when you mentioned that book, because I started my company, Moza Bella company, by myself. And, you started small and you would think that you could do everything. But then as the company grows, very quickly, I learned that I could do everything, but I could do anything, but I cannot do everything. And therefore, I invited Scott Miller. We met in we met in a 10X community, started by Grant Cardone. And, talked to him and learned about his tremendous experience in sales. And I said, wow, and he has everything that I would love to have in my business partner. And so basically, he is my, I can do, I have a lot of weaknesses. Right. And he's the person who could, pull all of that and those things up. And I just proposed and he said, yes. And, that has been a great, I'm very grateful to have him join me. And it's been a great team.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that you guys did end up finding each other. Scott, same question. What's your come up story? Because I know that as we were talking off camera, there's a rags to riches, pardon the cliche, but a rags to riches story behind your tale. So do share.
So first thing I want to point out for the gentleman in our audience, that Moza specifically said she proposed to me and I said yes. So I just point that out to the guys. So I'm kidding, of course. But and again, also thank you for having us on this afternoon. The thing about it is, so my rags to riches story is, when I was a very young person, I got involved in some things in my life that did not bode well for me. And they progressively got worse to the point where by the time I was 26 years old, I was living out on the streets. So, the funny thing was, people excuse the things in their lives. And I told myself, as long as I had a job, that, I wasn't that bad. Like, I actually was saying to myself, well, it's good I live in my car because I'm saving on rent. And I would tell myself ridiculous things like that. So, but that was all born from, being involved in drugs and alcohol and all kinds of stuff that was just not healthy. Not healthy for me anyway. So, I had a moment in my life. There's a book out there called The Moment Your Life Turns Around. I had a moment of clarity when I was 27 years old. It was the middle of the winter. It was very cold in the Northeast, living in a car. And I had a moment of clarity. My life literally changed at that moment. So did I become successful at that moment? I would suggest yes, but it didn't come to fruition until several years later, right? So I believe that when you make a decision, right, decide means to cut off from. When you make a decision, that's the moment that your life changes. It's not later on down the road where people see the change. It's like if you go on a diet, right? The first day you eat a salad, you don't lose 25 pounds, right? It's a culmination of, but it's that decision that day where you decided to cut yourself off from the old you or the old habits and start something new, right? And so that's what I did. I got a job as a Teamster truck driver. I was driving a truck around Brooklyn, New York. And again, I had an epiphany one day I was a truck driver, so I don't mean this as an affront to anybody that drives a truck or does that type of labor, but I realized like this was way not what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be doing something much different. And so I was pretty good at reasoning things. I'm very good with numbers. Numbers is I could do most math problems in my head that many people need a calculator for. So I kind of had that gift, and I understood that was my gift. And well, then how do I apply that, right? So I got into sales. I almost starved to death because I talked way too much. I didn't ask enough questions or listen to other people. So, but then once I started to study sales and some of the old time sales trainers, I was riding around with cassette tapes back in those days, right? Maybe some of the audience doesn't even know what that is, but listen to cassette tapes and it really changed my life. I mean, it gave me an education that was fairly inexpensive. I think tape sets I was buying from Nightingale Kona back in those days for like $39 or whatever they were. And it really, it put me on a different trajectory. And then somewhere along the way, I ran into somebody like Moza in a business. He was actually a guy, but somebody who thought like her. And he really helped me change my thinking about the value that I had in myself, because I didn't really believe in myself at that point. I still saw myself as this kind of loser that lived on the streets and drove a truck and could barely get by. And this person helped me change my mindset, which is, literally what Moza, I hate that word, changing your mindset, but changing a set point, I'll call it, right? Like changing the thermostat in your mind. And she's really quite good at that. But this person did that, and I just took off from there and ended up being a number one ranked salesperson at a Fortune 100 company. And then I owned a company for many years, a trucking company. And then since then, I've been an entrepreneur for many years now. So, and been quite successful. She and I travel all over the world, and we do business in many countries and in many areas. So, but and that was a long-winded answer, my apology, but to talk specifically what you mentioned with one being like kind of the creative, and then one of the people put it all together. Moza is extremely creative. This is a person who is incredibly intelligent. She's very, I always say to people, there's educated, there's intelligent, and there's smart. She's all three. She has several degrees. She's intelligent, but she's also smart. And, we've all heard about, these high IQ people that don't know how to come in out of the rain, so to speak. You know what I mean? Those are people that are missing the last one, the smart. They're educated, they're intelligent, but they don't know what to do with it. So she's kind of the dreamer. She dreams up most everything we do in business starts off with a dream in her head, and then it gets shared with me, and then we kind of go back and forth. And then, as you mentioned, when we launch different ideas and products that we do, then I kind of put the nuts and bolts or the dollars and cents to it. And that works really quite well between us. So,
as both of you are sharing your stories, the common thread that I think pulls you guys together is this level of, I'm going to call it radical self-awareness. For both of you, for Moza to, in the first 3 sentences of her introduction, say, listen, I have a lot of weaknesses. That takes a deep level of knowing oneself to be able to understand that. And then the same thing, Scott, with you as you were going, there was a moment of clarity, a moment where you're like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be somewhere else, which leads to a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a ton of things here that I want to unpack, but I'm going to start there with that radical self-awareness. Moza, let's start with you. For you, where do you think that came from? Where did you decide to be so honest with yourself?
I like how you said about the perspectives. The minute that we change our perspective in life, that's when we can change. I believe that we have to grow. Like for myself, I went through different phases in life where when I was younger, I thought that, I was so consumed in my ego. I thought that I knew everything and I was the smartest person. I got, fame, and I lived in my little bubble. And then when I started to, I was born in Vietnam, and when I came here to the United States when I was in my 20s, and I came here and they said, okay, well, you came here too late and you're too old to learn a second language. You're not going to be able to make it here. And I thought to myself, I said, that has to change. I don't want to be just a statistics because I know that I can do better. So then I have been very determined. And, but the more you do, the more you hit the obstacles. And in order, like, for me to keep moving, I need to know that, okay, well, this is like, I have to focus on my goal, and I know that there's a way out, that I could not give up on whatever the goals that I wanted to achieve. And like you said, because I have done so many things to survive and to thrive, and I know that I could not do everything. So I learned during the process that yes, I can do to a certain extent, but there's some areas that I need to learn, I need to improve, and I need help. So that has been a process, and I think, it comes with age as well, and comes with a lot of failure. I've learned so much from my failures in life, personal, professional, financial, like everything combined. But that is, if you're talking about the self-awareness, I think it comes with experience and failures, and thrive and learn from there.
That's so interesting because I in my early stages of being an entrepreneur, which started when I was very young, I learned that there were 3 important things that you needed to do right away: fail fast, fail frequent, fail forward. Those 3 things made a whole lot of sense to me. And when I look around and I watch what other people do, they like to talk a lot about how successful they want to be. But when it comes time to do the 3 most important parts of being successful, they are met with a tremendous amount of fear. Scott, was that part of your experience when you crossed over the threshold, so to speak?
I mean, 100%. I was, I think it was Mark Twain that said, do the thing you fear, and the fear of and the death of fear is certain. It sounds great. It's an easy quote to say, but then to actually do that is a whole different thing, right? So, yeah, I mean, I was a Teamster truck driver. I made $14.93 an hour. This is back when minimum wage was $2.75 an hour. So I thought I was the richest guy on the block. Of course, unfortunately for truck drivers, the wage isn't much higher than that today, 30-something, almost 40 years later, right? So, it was. Leaving that job, I walked out, I made that decision, and I went back that afternoon. I gave my paperwork in to the desk, and I went over to the shop steward, and I said, I'm leaving. Just gave my 2 weeks notice and I'm out. And of course, this guy went on this thing, don't leave the job. This is the best job and great benefit. And it was all those things, by the way. But I just knew I didn't belong there. And so I went into sales. And as I mentioned, kind of quipped earlier, I almost starved to death. I literally almost starved to death. Like I had no money. I was living on, I was going to the supermarket with like $15 and walking around like trying to add it up in my head. How far will $15 take me? So
is that how you got so good at math?
I think it is. And that because I played golf at the time too, and all my friends cheated on their scorecards. So I learned math quickly so I could keep track in my head what the actual scores were. So I'm kidding, of course. But look, failure is a resource, right? It helps you find the edge of your capacities. If you're not willing to make mistakes, then you never know what your potential is. You'll never know. That's the people that get caught in what we call the comfort zone, right? And the comfort zone looks great for a lot of people. Look, you can make a couple $100,000 a year and have a nice house and 2.3 kids or whatever it is, and a dog and a white picket fence and all those things. But from where I sit, the way I look at that is then I become a slave to that, right? It's very difficult once I get comfortable to move to the next level. One of the great things about working with Moza is that, and I hope she'll agree, but certainly from my perspective, she pushes me hard. And I don't like it sometimes. You know what I mean? I walk away from I'm not a combative person, so I'm not a reactionary person. So I walk away from our conversation sometimes silent. And when I do that, she knows that she's, poked the bear a little bit. But I love that she does that because it makes me a better person. It makes me a better man. It makes me a stronger leader in our business. It makes me a better executive. It makes me a better visionary because, I'm a practical kind of guy. So yes, I have some vision. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur if I didn't, but she's the one who's really got that and she pushes me into those, places that are not comfortable. So yeah, it scared the living bleepity bleep out of me to walk away from that job and go into something. And then what happened was I got into the next, into the sales job, and I'm literally thinking, and then your mind starts working on you. See, this was the dumbest thing you've ever done. What are you doing? Quick, let's go back and start back at that job before they give it away to somebody else. Like all these things you start thinking in your mind. And I forget which famous story it is of maybe it was Napoleon or so. I don't think it was Napoleon, but somebody where they landed on the shore and then they went up to the top of the hill and he sent a couple of men down to burn the ships, burn the boats. They're on an island. There's no getting off. We either win or we perish. And that's kind of I actually had that written down in my notebook, that we win or we perish. Like we're going to win or we're going out of business. One of those two things. So, and she and I are no time sooner we'll be going out of business. So
I wish I had my other phone with me right now. My lock screen is the Apollo 13 creed. Failure is not an option.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important. It's so two things. The first thing is that what you mentioned sounded a lot like accountability. It sounded a lot like when you decided to do what you did, there was some things that maybe had a level of resistance to. You didn't want to be here. It's scary. It was easier to go back to where you were before, right? But to torch the island or burn the boats or whatever the old adage is, how much do you think that accountability played a role in your success?
Well, look, I said it before, but unless you allow yourself to make mistakes, to fail, you're never going to know. You're never going to have the opportunity to test your limits on the other side and know what you're capable of. I went from living on the streets to making millions and millions and millions of dollars over the years and been, very successful in business. I hope that doesn't sound braggadocious. It's not meant that way. It's meant to be, it's almost unbelievable to me. Like I look at my life today. She and I were at a business conference last weekend and I got up and got to say a few words and I always say this, it's almost like I can't, I wake up in the morning and I'm living this dream. The funny part about that, Devon, is that years ago when I was making that change, I wrote down this little thing. I probably shouldn't say it out loud because I've never trademarked it, but I'll say it anyway. Dream your life, then live your dream. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
Like dream up, what is it that you want? And if you go to a little, if Christmas is coming, you go to a 10-year-old kid and you ask them what they want. They're going to come back with a list of 342 things. They want a swimming pool, a mansion, a dog, a pony, a pet elephant. They want to go take a trip to Mars. They'll have the most wildest ideas that you could ever think of. We as adults, we ask an adult, what would you like for Christmas? Oh, I don't know, not much. Maybe, just maybe get me a Starbucks gift card for $5 and I'll be happy. Like we forget about, we forget how to dream. We forget that we're alive and that the whole idea to being on planet Earth is to just cut the parachute cord, so to speak, and jump. You know what I mean? Like just go. And what's the worst thing that can happen? There's no debtor's prison in this country. So if you lose all your money, you go out of business, you could start again tomorrow. It's not like some countries where they throw you in prison, right? So, and here's what I believe about it in that regard. You could take everything away from me, because this has happened to me twice in my life. Take everything away from me, take all my money, take all my possessions, and plop me out on the street somewhere, and I guarantee you within a year, I'll be back to where I am right now. I know that for a fact.
That comes from having how does Alex, Alex Hermosi, he puts it, having an undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are. And isn't that an homage to the fact that what you believe to be true becomes true. And I think that's something that a lot of people overlook, the depth and importance that part plays in our success. As you were speaking, I was reminded of Dale Carnegie and Think and Grow Rich, and how he talks about this idea of put together what you think the most amazing life would be, write it down on paper, and then begin to manifest this through your actions. But while this book is playing out, there's this thing going on in the background where he's rewiring the way you look at the world, the way that you see the things that are happening around you. Moza, you have this belief in yourself that almost seems to the outside, and please forgive me if this seems insulting, I'll clarify if I need to, but it almost seems like a foolish level of arrogance, how much you believe in yourself. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think there's something there for other people who have the self-doubt, who believe themselves not to be capable. How did you nurture that belief in yourself?
That's a very good question. Nobody has asked me that question. And now you make me think back. I think it's just because in Asian culture, and I was born as the oldest child, my parents raised me with a very high expectation. So they expect you to be the top. They expect you to do well. An A student all the time. So I don't know if that was a burden, but it's just it's, to me, it's like you keep your target, like small targets, and then you're so determined, you're so disciplined to achieve that goal, and it's non-negotiable goal. It's and it's just one goal at a time, right? And then that's where you can achieve your ultimate goal that you would like to achieve at the end. I don't know if I answer your question, but it's I have to think about that myself even. It's not about arrogant. It's about that you can do it. Right. I never wanted to conform into just like everybody else. And I think it just, to be honest, I was a shy kid. I was an introvert. I spent a lot of time thinking, writing, reading, than talking. And I don't know if that, it's just kind of personality, my own character, or or not, but I know that we can do it. Even nowadays, I talk to women, and I said that because I work with a lot of female professionals, and I said it doesn't matter. Your life may not be together at this moment, but I know deep down inside, you want everything. Like, you want to have a lot of money, you want to be loved, to be desired, to be respected, and to have a happy life with a lot of money, with abundant health. Like, you want everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we don't have to jeopardize in one area to be able to achieve the other one. A lot of female professionals nowadays, they very successful financially, in their professionally, but then something had to give in the personal side. And then we've learned, the society has taught us that, oh, well, maybe that is the reality that we have to accept. No, you don't have to accept that. Right? Or in order for you to be strong, you have to be more masculine because being feminine is the sign of weakness. No, you don't have to. You can just embrace your femininity, own your confidence, and then you can still very powerful. And that's what I believe, as a female, we can have everything. And that is a reality.
There's a humbleness in the way that you speak about that. And I know, I guess from my own experience, there's a lot of self-dialogue that happens right from the moment that you're like, I'm going to go do this thing, right? You have to talk to yourself. You're the only one who's experiencing it with you. Everybody else is doing their own thing and they're living their own life and they're responsible for their own things. And so that self-dialogue, somebody that really changed the game for me, asked me this very simple question. He said, if that voice in your head were to come out and turn into a real person, would you be friends with that person? Would you be afraid of that person? Would that person be your worst enemy? And that was such a life-changing question to ask myself, because I was my own worst enemy. I was the guy that was in my head saying that I wasn't meant for this. I couldn't do it. All the bad things that other people thought of you or said to you out of their own pain and anguish becomes a part of who you are. And Scott, you mentioned this in your introduction. You had this snapshot of who you are. I think it's really important for everybody to take a really, really close look at what that snapshot looks like, and then compare it to the person that you see in the mirror to see if there's alignment. And when you do finally find that alignment, that's when you can kind of put things together. Scott, for you, when you were looking back at that snapshot, what was it that helped you change the version that you saw of yourself now to the man you are living the dream?
So there's a famous saying in the movie Wall Street where the guy says toward the end of the movie, he says, the man looks into the abyss and nothing is staring back at him. And that's when man finds himself, right? And so I think that that's true for all of us, right? We're looking into this dark hole of our mind of what we believe to be true or not true about ourselves. And we kind of live that out, right? And I think I don't know whether I was brave or I was stupid, but for one reason or the other, I looked at that and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore, and I got pretty good at sales. And, I interviewed with a big company, Fortune 100 company. And I got to like the fifth or sixth interview. I thought for sure they were hiring, right? I went there to get my offer, the last meeting. I'm like, this is great. Pick up my company car, I'm good. And so we go to the meeting and they said, well, we'll let you, it turns out this company didn't want to hire people without a college degree. And I didn't have a college degree. But I never hid that from anybody. It was right on my resume, but somebody discovered it at the very end of the interview. And the guy said, they said, well, we'll let you know. And I left there. And of course I knew what the answer to that would be. A few days later, the area sales manager called me and he said, the area vice president, this company really has, you have to have a college degree and we're going to take a pass on you. And I said, yeah, but, the interview went so well. And, we talked about, we were dreaming in these interviews about how we're going to increase business and on and on. And so he said, so what are you going to do now? And I said, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and I'm going to get every single one of your customers in my area of responsibility, the company I'm working for now, because I was at a competing company. And I said, I'm going to take all your business away. And then when I do, maybe you guys will have you'll remember me at that point. 3 years later, my phone rings. It's these same people. After I one of their customers, I couldn't get away. They stayed with them, but everybody else, I got them all to come over to us, at least partial business. And they called me up and they brought me in and they said, so the guy, the area vice president says, well, so what are you doing here today? And I said, I won't say the exact words because it's not nice language, but I said, exactly what I'm doing here. I've been beating you guys for the last few years and now you want me on the team. And he said, yeah, I give that story because it illustrates that kind of thinking of making that shift. Like I went in from that point on, up until that point, I really just kind of worked along. When I got into that situation where I was rejected for something that I saw a weakness in myself, I saw not having a college degree as a weakness in me. And I'm not poo-pooing college degrees. Moza has 3 or 4 advanced degrees. It's highly valuable. It's highly valuable in our business. She's the smart one, right? So, but it doesn't define a person. Like your ability is your ability. And if you're willing to learn, which I'm willing to learn, I spend more time learning and studying and reading than probably 95% of the college graduates in America would be my guess anyway. And by virtue of that, I get educated, right? I speak well. I can go into a boardroom and handle myself. I do business at a high level. But I didn't always believe that. And when I got in that situation, I kind of got a chip on my shoulder where I took this attitude of, I'll show you, and what I realized several years later, Devon, is that I wasn't really trying to prove it to these other people. I was really trying to prove it to myself. And the day that I realized that was the day I was able to release that. And then all of a sudden, success just started coming to me like Napoleon Hill, you talked about the Think and Grow Rich earlier. He talks about all of a sudden, riches will come in so fast and in such abundance, you'll be wondering where they were hiding all those years. That's literally what happened. That's literally what happened to me. And it was because I let go of that lack thinking, and here's the thing. So many people get caught in trying harder. There's a story about a guy sitting at a resort. He's sitting out on the deck and it's screened in and there's a fly and the fly is trying to get out and he's banging against the window, bang. And, the more he hits it, the harder he flaps his wings until finally he just falls dead on the windowsill from exhaustion, from trying harder. Where if he turned around and got 180 degrees behind him, the door was wide open and he could have flew right out and been flying around outside, and he killed himself for trying harder, right? One of the things that Moza and I do very, very well, I believe, is that we don't try harder. Like it's an exercise in futility. We try new ideas. We've tried some things that, like, later on, we looked at each other and we were like, what were we thinking? You know what I mean? But we learned from that, right? And relying on doing this, more of the same, and doing that in a committed effort, in a committed way. Like people are like, if I want to bang my head on the wall, I'm going to do it harder to see if I, it doesn't make any sense when you really think about it, and it can actually blind you to the pathway forward, to the idea that's going to catapult you to the next level, whether that be personally, professionally, busy, whatever. I mean, it's kind of true across the board. So, that was really it was trying to prove to the rest of the world, albeit later on, I found it was me trying to prove to myself that I was good enough. And when I embraced that, my whole life changed, literally.
You say, constantly banging your head against that window, trying harder, not the way to get there. There's a moment, or there's a time, there's a place where you have to shift, right? You can't keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. We all know that's insanity. So we shift, but we look at, and I know this from my experience. I know somebody listening right now is like, yeah, I get it. There's a million things on my table. And with a million things on your table, how do you, I guess I'm going to throw this one to Moza. What do you do to really prioritize what you think is the right action? Because if there's so many in front of you, you could very easily get hung up with, paralysis by analysis, right?
So focus on the result. What results do you want to achieve? And then you're going to plan your actions from there. I know that, like you said, there's a lot on the table and we can be distracted. But we don't chase the one that is the shiniest. We want to know what is the end result that we want and then work from there. That's how we work. That's how Scott and I work anyway. So
such a simple and concise answer. There's this idea that business is complicated, and I would love to assert, and I hope that I get a little support on this one. We tend to make things complicated so that we can justify the reward or the result it is that we're trying to go after. And I don't know even if we do this on purpose. I think some of it might even be subconscious. Do you see that too?
Probably. And you're right, because, I think when you see things that are complicated, because it comes from the confusion. Like sometimes people say that they want certain things, but they are not clear of what they truly want. So there's an area where you think that you should want that, or deep down inside that you truly want that result. So there's, should and what you truly, one is from your brain and, your mind, and the other one is actually from your soul. So we have to be able to identify which one is actually would make you happy. A lot of people, they want to get, certain things in life, and when they get there, they feel empty. Because that's not what they truly want in deep down inside. That is something that they think that they should achieve, but they are not being authentic with themselves. So when people can get that very clear vision of what they truly want to achieve in life, I think everything is going to be easier. And like you said, I will, like when I work with people and I don't know if this is going to serve any of, or your people that are listening. Life is very simple. We human make it way too complicated. You just have to know what you want to achieve at the end and work it out. It's very simple. Focus on what you want. Focus on your strength. Focus on what you can do right now. Be very clear, be very organized, and things going to be so simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple.
Plus, to add on to that, we're all just making it up as we go. I don't know how many people are tuned into that, but if we think about it, we go back in time, we were a bunch of animals banging sticks and rocks together, and I don't know how we survived that part of it. But at some point in time, we figured out a whole bunch of different things, including commerce and business and being in service of each other. Somebody said to me the other day, your mission in life should be to make yourself useful to others. And if you're not actively doing that, that's why you're sad or depressed or anxious or missing the elements in your life. You said you could work your whole life, get somewhere, and still not be happy. I know tons of guys who have pockets that are so full to the moon and back, but they are lonely and can't find love because now they've separated themselves from the average person. And they can't talk about the same things the average person talks about. And I think there's something there to be said about how we're just winging it. Do you agree?
Yes, I totally agree. And like you said, like a lot of people feel, we experience that because we are not fulfilled. Somewhere you disengage with your true self. And sometimes it's harder because you just do what you think that you're supposed to do, but then you feel empty because you have the disengagement with your soul. A lot of people, not everybody can be happy with materialistic things. Maybe they just be happy being free. But the society say that you need to have a big house and a car and, everything has to be expensive for you to be perceived as being successful. And you want to be successful. And therefore, you just do what you think you should do. And that may not be what makes you happy at the end. So I'm just saying that, that may or may not be applied to everybody. I believe that money is the tool for you to be happy, because I believe that, I myself, I know that, I keep saying that I want to be useful to everybody else, like whoever that, not everybody, but whatever that I can do to make myself useful to people, because I want to serve, right? At the end, is, and in order for me to help more people, yes, I can talk, I can teach, but with more money, I can help more people. So the level, the higher the level of the success that I have, that would open the doors for me to more opportunities and the means for me to help more people. And that's the principle that I live for. But that's true to me. That may not be true to other people. And that's okay. If you don't think like that, that is totally fine. And I want people to know that too.
Yeah. To have but to be forgiving of oneself in spite of your efforts and the things that you're trying to aspire to, it says a lot about your power to set the bar for yourself.
Yes.
The person that is doing the actions gets to decide what the milestones are going to be, what the benchmarks are, where you are right now, where you want to be, and what steps go in between all of that. And this is interesting because it also points at with music, with art, with all these other things, comedy. This guy I follow on TikTok, he said, Anthony Jeselnik. He's a very controversial comedian. I don't recommend looking him up if you are if you don't have a strong stomach, because this guy he breaks the boundaries. But here's the thing: what he said was, if you say a joke, or you do a thing, or you create a piece of art, and it is just meant to be anything other than its intended purpose. For example, if I say a joke, I'm really genuinely trying to make somebody laugh. But if I say the joke to hurt people, then you're just being a troll. And so the idea here is that you're trying to look for ways to get away with it, so to speak. Because if I can write a love song that is made up of no more than 50 of the most common words we've ever had in the English language, and it still makes the top 10 Billboard charts, does that make it any less compared to the other ones that are on that chart, like in terms of the work that you do to get there? So I think that that's really key in terms of how you set your bar, and then the mindset that you have going into those things. If you are looking from the wrong paradigms, you can very quickly get yourself in trouble. And we've talked a lot about mindset and paradigms on the show before, which reminds me, Scott, you mentioned very early in this conversation that mindset was not a term that you liked. In fact, I think you said you hated it. I would love for you to unpack that for me. What's in your mind there?
Look, mindset is a popular vernacular you heard these days, right? It's a trendy thing to say. I look at it more, if you want to go deeper of what mindset is really about, for me anyway, it's about suspending your disbelief, right? Changing your set point. If you believe that I would submit that if you make 60 grand a year, 50 grand a year, there's probably a tolerance 20% either way of what your comfort zone is, what you believe, your mindset, right? So if you make 50 grand, you start working harder, right? Which I don't tell anybody to do. I think, don't work harder, figure something out instead, right? But let's say you work harder, you make $60,000. As soon as you get north of 60 grand, that's 20%. All of a sudden, you're going to start throwing on the brakes. You'll start calling in sick to work, or you'll start arguing with your customers, or you'll whatever will happen, right? And then you start to trend the other way. And the next thing you know, you're down to 40 grand, right? Because, and that's 20% the other way. And all of a sudden, oh, shoot, I can't get by on less than 40 grand. I bet. And you go back to doing, and you get caught in this mindset roller coaster, or I don't know what you would call it, right? Maybe Moza has a better word for it, because we like to talk about it as set point, right? We like to talk about it as suspend your disbelief. If you're going to doubt anything in your life, if you want to doubt something, doubt your limits. I mean, there's been a lot of people that I've heard numbers all over the place, but I've heard numbers from anywhere from 5 to 15% is all that we as human beings use our mental capacity, maybe 5 to 15%, somewhere in that range. We don't, the old guy, Bob Proctor, who died a couple of years ago, he used to talk about people, think, and then he would follow it up with, but most people would rather die than think. You know what I mean? Like I don't really like the word mind. I hate the word mindset because it's just a nice saying. It's like taking a warm bath. You know what I mean? It feels good at first, but then it gets cold after a while. You got to keep adding hot water or it wears off, right? And, so act as if your success is certain, right? Suspend your disbelief. I don't know. It's doubt, which is this whole thing about mindset. Doubt is what causes I think it's worse than fear. Fear, if we've all heard the acronym for that would be, false emotions appearing real, right? You can walk through that.
Right.
But doubt is a different animal. Doubt is with the little boogeyman, not fear. It's the little boogeyman that lives in your head that right before you call the girl to go on a date, or right before you go walk into the boardroom for the biggest presentation of your life, you start telling yourself things that are just not true. I don't belong here. She's way too pretty for me, or he's too way handsome for me, or I don't belong in, I'm just a regular person. I don't belong in this boardroom with these C-suite executives, whatever it might be. Doubt is a way, way, way worse thing than fear, in my opinion, right? And, I like to call it moving the set point. I like to call it adjusting your belief, as opposed to mindset, right? Mindset is, I don't know, it's so, and here's the thing, right? Like skepticism is, that's based on we presume that to be rational thinking, like mindset. We presume that to be rational thinking. It's not, it just isn't, there's, I don't know, maybe I'm going a little too deep on, or a little too against the word mindset, but I like to just, if people can get rid of that saying and just believe that you can, act as if your success at everything that you do is certain. And even when you're met with a failure or a setback, that's just a lesson. You've just been taught a lesson. That's it. It's nothing more than that. If you ask somebody on a date and they say no, if you're like most people, you would give up or maybe go ask somebody else. That's not me. If you say no, I'm going to ask you out at least 50 more times until you say yes. It's just that simple.
And so this is so interesting because I think what you're pointing at is the difference between something like motivation and discipline. Motivation, for the sake of semantics here, motivation is an emotion. Some days you wake up with that emotion and some days you don't. Other days you have to fight to get that emotion, but it is what it is. And so you have to maintain the discipline. Mel Robbins put it this way. So you have to wake up and be your own dad. You have to wake up and be your own mom. You have to tell yourself, go do the thing, right? Like self, go do the laundry. Self, go do the dishes. We're really, really good at convincing ourselves not to do these things because that is less work than it would take to actually go do the thing and all that other stuff. So I love that you are making that distinction between the two things, which kind of reminds me of me and my son. I'm trying to teach him to be an independent and critical thinker. And at times we end up at odds where we are having an intellectual conversation or debate about a thing that needs to happen. And the way that he would say something is like, oh, I'm too tired, or, oh, I'm not happy, or I'm too scared, or whatever. And a lot of them are emotional responses. And yes, my response to that is it's okay. It's natural. It's normal for you to be afraid. And I'll use this as an example, okay? We got to take our garbage from our side door to the back alley, and he's old enough now that that's a thing that he can do. And so he does it. Now, in the winter, it gets darker here sooner. It's still 5 o'clock, but it's 5 o'clock and the sun's gone. So the garbage needs to go out, and he needs to go in the dark to the alley and throw the garbage in the garbage bin. And he is afraid. And yes, you should be afraid of something that you don't know. That's a good emotion. People think it's a bad one, but it's a good one because it serves us. It serves us just like your fear of touching a hot stove. You see that it is red and it is hot and you don't want to touch it, and your fear is stopping you from causing yourself harm. So the fear is good, but sometimes fear is irrational, misplaced. It doesn't belong there. And so you have to do the thing scared. And that's, I think, what you're pointing at, Scott, is it's not about motivation, right? I'm tired. Well, that's okay. Do it tired. I don't feel like I want to do it, and that's okay. Do it anyways. And it's that part of you and that part of Moza, I think, that has led to, or at least contributed to, some level of success. Moza, do you agree with that?
Well, absolutely. And I'm glad that you talked about the emotion and the action. That's totally different, because people are saying that you can be they call me a motivational speaker. I said, no, I will take you to do the work. I don't just talk about it. And it's very interesting. And thank you for sharing the conversation, the story between you and your son, because I was, I received a lot of education like that from my father, my mom. I was very blessed to have very good parents. And they taught me to be a critical thinker when I was very young, right? I don't just, they taught me not to take action just because or based on my emotions. You do things based on your analysis. And I, my dad always showed me this is pros and cons. He would ask me to sit down in the living room, and he would ask me a question, waited for me to answer, and then he would analyze the situation, pros and cons, and then it's up to me to make the decision. And I was, maybe 7 or 8. And that's how it is. And then, yes, there's a lot of emotions going on, but I had to do it anyway, because it's not because, okay, well, you do that because mom and dad told you to do it. No, you do that because there are bigger reasons behind your actions. Therefore, you have to go through your emotions, and you got to do it. So I felt that I just wanted to share with you a little bit of that, because I feel so resonated with the story that you shared earlier about you and your son.
Yeah, the separation or compartmentalization, I guess, of the emotion, and this is important to just add a little cliff note here, is we're not dismissing the emotion. It's not like I'm throwing away the fact that you're scared or sad or anxious or whatever the emotion is, right? It's what a speaker would feel when you're getting on stage. I am about to do something that is going to be very challenging, which is to try to convince a large group of people of an idea that I have. And that's a challenge most people aren't willing to take on. And so naturally, you're going to feel some kind of energy. You're going to be excited and nervous or fearful or whatever, but you still got to do it. You still got to walk up the stairs, get on the stage, grab the microphone, and open your mouth and speak and say things in spite of that fear. And I think that that's really powerful for somebody who is going down the road of being an entrepreneur or trying to take on these challenges. And I don't even like using the word try. I'm a subscriber to Yoda, who do or do not. There is no try. So that I think that's really powerful. Something that I did want to touch on just as we wrap things up here is that you guys, Scott, you're a little bit older than I am, and I know how old I am, so I don't mean to age you by any measure here. But what I will say is that when I was coming up, doing the work that you guys do, the motivational speaker or whatever, that self-development stuff, that wasn't as mainstream as it is now. And it seems that, the celebrity of the olden days back in the 1900s was, the typical TV star or talk show host or whatever. And now there's been a shift collectively to the entrepreneurial celebrity. I know you guys are probably familiar with this, knowing that you worked with Grant Cardone. You got the guys like Gary Vee out there, even guys like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk who continue to put themselves in the limelight. You've watched this whole thing transform. How has it been your experience going through that evolution of it being like a very hush-hush thing, like, oh, you're working on yourself, you're reading a self-development book, what a loser, right? People used to say that kind of thing. And nowadays, it's like if you're not doing that work, you're on the outs. So like, what was it like going through that for you guys? I guess, Moza, why don't you just take the lead on that?
Scott, would you like to say that first? Because you're a little bit older than the both of us.
Are you guys trying to say I'm old?
Wise, I think, is the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a birthday coming up in 6 days that will confirm the fact that I'm getting a little older. So, but anyway, look, especially early on, I was, listening to these cassette tapes. People called me crazy. I'm a voracious read. I read like you wouldn't believe. Like I'm constantly. I usually have 3 books going at once. I have an Audible, I have a Kindle, and I actually have a hard book that I'll carry with me, and I have all 3 going at one time. And it's a thirst for knowledge, right? I think to talk to your question about the evolution is that I think what people discovered, look, you can go on YouTube right now and find a 15-year-old kid that's making $10 million a year, doing videos on YouTube. That didn't even exist. When I was a kid, there was, we had rotary phones, right? Our summer house had a what did they call that? It was like a phone. Everybody in the neighborhood had the same phone number, but your house would ring a certain number of times, right? And then you knew to answer the phone, right? That's there was no, everything was kind of traditional. I'll call it the Industrial Revolution way of life, which was go to school, get a job, pay your taxes, work for 40 years, retire, and then, you're good to go. Nobody looks at it like that anymore. Thank goodness, right? Because now it's, hey, I thought of some crazy idea, excuse me, that I could do. I don't need a college education. I don't need to, you have to be smart. You have to be intelligent about what you do. But I think, like I said, I started off listening to tapes. Then I went to seminars. Then I was, and I've invested probably more money than, people talk about the high cost of college education today. I've probably invested way more money than most people have in a college education in my education in that regard, right? The good news is I did it, a couple $1,000s at a time. So I don't have these giant loans I have to pay back, right? But of course, college when I was a kid was like, I think it was $2,000 or something for the whole year, right? So, look, and we talked about this a little bit. One of the things that this has taught us is that it teaches you to focus on the end rather than the means, right? If you know what the end is, right, you don't have to know how you're going to get there. You just have to know where you're going. Once you know that, then you can go back and find things that'll prove that true, that'll educate you to that end, right? If I want to learn how to be, make pens, I'll go on YouTube right now, and about a half an hour from now, I'll know how to put a pen together, right? Then I can go to wherever and find all the parts. And within a couple of weeks, I could be selling pens down at the, what I mean? Like it doesn't, and so the maturation, the change, whatever you want to call it in that thinking is that we've really leaving the industrial revolution and going into the digital age, which is helping us to understand there's different ways to think about things. You don't have to do it like this, and this to get the result. You could do this and then skip the next 8 steps and get the result 10 times the 10 times bigger, right? So I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but I think it's just it's a change. It's a shift in how people accept. They look at even in society, right? Just some of the things we accept in society today are very different than when I was a young person, right? So all good, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, acceptance is probably the key to everything in life. To the degree that I can accept things or I can't is to the degrees that I seem to do better or not. You know what I mean? So I'll push it back to Moza. See, maybe she thought of something now in the meantime.
Yeah, Moza, what do you make of the rise of the entrepreneur as the celebrity?
I think I agree with everything that Scott said earlier, and you, Devon. The only one thing that I would like to add is that most of the successful entrepreneurs, they want to be impactful. In previous years, because everything was very domestic and very local, right? So now we open to the concept of globalization. So like before, all of the entrepreneurs, they wanted to be impactful in their community, locally, regionally. Nowadays, how about your community is the whole world, is the entire world? And with nowadays technology, everything is feasible and achievable. So they still have the same drive that they want to be impactful with the work that they do. But now the whole world is their community. Mm. I think that's the same concept. It's just that because we see more because of the new technology nowadays.
We're just so much more connected than we ever have been. We have so much more access to information and knowledge than we ever have in our entire in our entire history. And it's almost you talked about the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, all these other things. I feel like we're in another era of great change. I'm going to dub it the age of enlightenment. I think that we're all coming to terms with times used to be tough. We didn't live past 40 years old. You know what I'm saying? It used to be really, really hard. And as we got better at that, and that only happened keep in mind, that only happened in the last 100 years, maybe 150 years, that we've had such incredible technological advancements to allow us to live as long as we do and have. So now, if you died at 40, like that was a long, happy life. But now you have you have twice as much time. And do you want to spend all that time being stuck in a cubicle or whatever, on a job site or whatever job you're doing? And so creating something for yourself that allows you the flexibility and freedom to both be useful and in service of a greater good, while being able to maintain a lifestyle that brings you happiness, I think is something we should all strive for. And now to see that we have these socially responsible celebrities out there who are fighting back against the stigma of the rich, stiff corporate guy who runs everything behind closed doors in this Illuminati-style meetings with this. We're slowly deconstructing those beliefs and creating room for whatever the next big thing is. And so I think the work that you guys are doing is significantly contributing to that, guiding and mentoring and coaching and providing knowledge and support to the entrepreneurs of the world. I think that's a huge responsibility for you guys to take on. And so flowers while you're here, I just want to put that out there. You guys have been incredibly generous with your time today, and I can't thank you enough for that on behalf of the listeners and viewers and myself, because my eyes are open to a lot of new things here, new perspectives. So thank you for that. In closing, I'm going to give you each just a couple of seconds to kind of wrap things up here. If there was one thing that you could say that you think would have a huge impact or big enough impact to help move an entrepreneur along their journey or inspire them, what do you think that would be, Moza? Why don't you go first?
Ask that question one more time, Devon.
If there was one thing that you could say to somebody who is on their entrepreneurial journey, who's stuck right now, or could use something uplifting, what would that be?
Being stuck is not optional. You have so much information out there, and there's so many tools out there for you to achieve whatever you want to achieve. And just do it. Push the limit. Improvement will make everybody happy. So push the limit.
Love that. Scott, same question.
Yeah, I would say, look, you have the potential. The resources are available everywhere. The opportunity is there. What's been missing for most entrepreneurs or most people in life for that matter is the decision to go for it. That's it. For now, all you really need is an aiming point and action. That's the key, is action. It's great to dream. It's great to plan. But at some point, if you want to drive from New York to California, you can map it all out, figure out where you're going to stay, all these things. But unless you get in the car and point west and put it in drive and step on the gas, you're not going to get there. You have to do those things, right? So, find an aiming point and take action.
Love that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you guys to work with you or collaborate with you in some way, is there a chance for them to do that?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. So just Google us up, or, we everywhere, social media, just Moza-Bella.com. And just, I would love to connect. And Devon, well, thank you so much for having us today. It's such a great conversation.
I couldn't have done it without you. Scott, same thing. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, is it same deal there?
Yeah, we both have, that's the main website. It features mostly Moza, right? Because a lot of our business focus is on that brand. Alternatively to that, they can find it right on the Moza Bella website, but there's a link. There's a button in that website to go to Master of Sales, which I've coined to myself. And they can click on that. They can see what I do there, but it's best to connect to us with us through the mozabella.com website.
Wonderful. We'll link to all that stuff in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with me or my absent partner, Mitch, you can reach us at email theperspective@gmail.com. For now, that's it for this episode, and we will see you in the next one.